Chapter 120 of Married Thrice to Salted Fish. Dayu's emperors didn't have a marriage leave, and the day after his wedding, he already had to attend court. This was a rule set by his predecessors. Jiangxin felt these rules were inhumane and had to be changed. But after thinking about it, he wasn't going to benefit from these changes. Only future emperors would benefit. Forget it. If he had to suffer, he couldn't suffer alone. After morning court finished, it was time for the cabinet members to discuss matters in Xinjiang Hall. Jiangxin sat on the dragon throne, fighting back his sleepiness as he listened to the ministers' reports on the unresolved matters that morning. Li Chan said, "Your Majesty, Jisha's governor, Xia Keijin, is requesting for an increase in the soldiers' pay. How should we respond?" Jiangxin asked, "Why does he want to increase the soldiers' pay?" Xia Keijin says there are frequent changes in the northern border and Jisha has to recruit more soldiers and acquire more horses. They are taking precautions. Jiangxin said casually, "Does Xia Keijin mean to say that the king of the northern border has plans to rebel once again?" Li Chan said cautiously, "I dare not speak nonsense. The king of the northern border and Jingchen are living a lovey-dovey happy life in the north. He has no reason to rebel, and if they had wanted to rebel, they could have done so 2 years ago, taking advantage of when the court was preoccupied with the war with Shishya. Why would they wait until now?" Jiangxin said. What Jen sees is Xia Keijin growing apprehensive because of Shen Shiyuan's fall. Taking warning from an overturned cart, he is made even more aware of the importance of money and food for soldiers and horses. And so he has the audacity to ask Zhen for more pay and provisions for soldiers. In the Dayu, the governors were the managers of the provinces and its highest local official. Jishao was foremost among the 9 provinces. It bordered the north and occupied a vast territory. Xia Keijin had entrenched himself in Jishao for many years, covering the sky with one hand. He had been assembling a personal army, leaving the court with no choice but to be on guard against him. Li Chan asked, "Then your Majesty means not to give him?" Jiangxin thought for a while, twirling a yet unstained brush in his hand. He said, "Xia Keijin might not actually be harboring any thoughts he shouldn't. This might simply be the grieving of a fox for the hare. He's just a little shaken. If we do not provide it, I'm afraid we might be beating the grass to scare the snake. If we wish for him to remain calm, we would still need to give something to him. However, Zhen has no intention of giving him everything he wants." Jiangxin suddenly started twirling his brush. "Relay my order. The Ministry of War and the Ministry of Revenue are to discuss and come up with an appropriate amount. We cannot not give him, but we won't give all." Li Chan said, "This minister hears Your Majesty's order." After Li Chan retreated, Nanan Hao stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, there was a severe drought in Shushao last year, and famine broke as soon as winter came. Many of its people have been forced from their homes and starved of food. Should we distribute grain and provisions as soon as possible to relieve the disaster?" Jiangxin frowned. "Send the aid. Also, Jushao is to be exempted from land tax for 3 years. Then an imperial censor came forward to present his complaint. "Your Majesty, the eldest son of the Minister of Rights was in a male brothel in the capital the day before yesterday. Driven by jealousy over one young man, he came to blows with the Wen family's ninth young master. Both come from wealthy, prominent families, the sons of some of our highest officials. Unexpectedly, doing such indecent and vulgar things, it sets an extremely bad example. I hope Your Majesty will punish them severely. These censors have literally no freaking job. They are like gossip aunts, but worse. As the censor's complaint wasn't as important as the matters the other ministers presented, Johnson took his time to do a bit of something else. He opened a blank scroll, wrote down the words, "What are you doing, Babe?" and handed it to Shah Songsi. Shah Songsi tacitly understood and retreated with the scroll in his hands. Jongshan asked the censor, "Who did you say were fighting?" "The eldest son of the Minister of Rites and the Wen family's ninth young master." Jongshan wondered, "These two have a good relationship, don't they? I remember that they grew up together." The censor said solemnly, "The emperor is wise. Though they come from different families, they regard themselves as brothers. Turning against each other for a man, they spoke ill of each other, beat each other, punching and kicking. Beauty misleads. A blue face brings calamity. The words of our ancestors ring true." These guys, they're like recruiting for a freaking cult. Ugh. Junction yawned, pretending not to understand what the censor was implying. "Who struck first?" The censor hesitated for a moment and said, "According to my investigation, it was ninth young master Wen who threw the first punch. But ninth young master Wen claims he didn't hit the Minister of Rites' eldest son very hard. A touch, that's all. But the Minister of Rites' son threw a very strong punch in return." Jiangxin found it both infuriating and laughable. He suddenly felt like some kind of kindergarten teacher. They haven't necessarily turned against each other. I think they are more like children throwing tantrums. The imperial censor said, voice deep, "Your Majesty, these two are both over 16 years old. They are no longer children. Does the emperor mean to say they have committed no fault?" Imperial censors have always been blunt and outspoken. Jiangxin didn't become angry. He raised his hand and signaled the censor to calm down. "Why so anxious? Shen didn't say they wouldn't be punished. However, neither of them hold any official position, so I can only punish their parents. The Minister of Rites and Wen Gaogong have failed to properly teach their son and grandson. They will be fined for half a year, and each will be fined 1,000 taels of silver to fill the treasury." After being so busy for a couple of hours, they finally finished discussing all matters that should be discussed. The rain in June, the wind in July, all these good and beautiful things in the world couldn't compare to the words, "This minister will now take his leave." Except for his beautiful wife, of course. As soon as the ministers retreated, Jiangxin's dignified posture quickly collapsed and he slumped lazily on the dragon throne. He felt exhausted physically and mentally, more tired than after plowing 3 acres of land. "Jiangxin, how do you know what it is to plow 3 acres of land?" Fortunately, Shah Songxing had returned from Xinjiang Palace with Lin Qingyu's reply. After the emperor and empress were married, the empress should reside in Fengyi Palace. But Jiangxin didn't want to live separately from Lin Qingyu, so he had Lin Qingyu remain in Xinjiang Palace. He even moved him into the main hall from the side hall. Not to mention in the imperial family, even in ordinary noble families, The master of house and the madam had their own residences, but the emperor and the empress lived together every day like some commoner couple. Huh, please don't look down on us. We don't have money to have different residences in a freaking complex to live separately. Lynching his reply to Jiang Shen was only three short words: hatching the egg. It turned out that he was looking after their eldest son, or perhaps eldest daughter, who was about to be given birth. No wonder he was so perfunctory in his reply. Jiang Shen really wanted to go and watch Lin Qingyu hatch the egg, but he still had a lot of reports he needed to read. These reports, these evil reports, the eternal bane to his existence, the shackles of pain in his life. Jiang Shen stared at the pile on his table and every part of his body resisted. Forget it. He gave up on himself. I will sleep for a while and read them later. Shah Songsi urged, Your Majesty, if you delay until night again, the Empress will be unhappy. Jiang Shen hesitated and said, Then I will read quietly after he falls asleep. Shah Songsi, having gotten the Empress's instructions in advance, had no choice but to toughen his scalp and continue to urge, Your Majesty, these reports contain important matters selected by the cabinet. They really must not be put off. Jiang Shen. Dot dot dot. Lin Qingyu came to Xinjiang Hall and asked Shah Songxi, who was standing guard outside, How is His Majesty? Shah Songxi smiled bitterly. The Emperor. Seeing Shah Songxi's expression, Lin Qingyu already had a guess. Walking into the inner hall, he saw Jiang Shen lying on the dragon desk. He looked as though he had already fallen asleep. He had his head pillowed on one arm, pressing against an open secret missive, brush still in hand. Lin Qingyu pulled out the secret decree. This was a secret decree for Shen Haoshi. Jiang Shen was ordering the heavenly prison sect to go to Jishao to secretly observe the governor's movements. He also said that while he was there, Shen Haoshi could go to the northern border to catch up with Jun Chen. When Jiang Shen wrote the latter part, his words were crooked and could barely be made out. This was enough to prove that he had held on until he simply couldn't and fell asleep. Lin Qingyu took off the fox fur robe from his own shoulders and covered Jiang Shen. Jiang Shen slowly woke up. His arm having gone numb, he opened his eyes and saw Lin Qingyu standing in front of the imperial desk, writing something with a brush. They had just been married. In order to display the majesty of the imperial household, Lin Qingyu chose to wear splendidly decorated robes, extremely glamorous and luxurious. Jiang Shen popped his head up with his hands, looked at Lin Qingyu with a smile, and said, after a while, Is the Empress done hatching the egg? Is it a prince or a princess? Lin Qingyu glanced at him. Hatching eggs isn't that quick. It will take a few days for the little poisonous snake to break through its shell. Now that you're up, go and move to the bed. Sleeping on your desk isn't good for your health. It's fine. Jiang Shen moved his shoulders a bit. I'm used to sleeping like this. What are you reading? The reports. I will handle the rest for you, and you can go and rest. Ah, this is embarrassing. Jiang Shen sat on the dragon throne and, borrowing strength from the desk, slid in front of Lin Qingyu with a slight push. The dragon chair in Xinjiang Hall had specially been remodeled by Jiang Shen. The four-legged The four legs were installed with wheels, allowing him to slide around. He also had it modified to allow for the height to be adjusted. I just discovered something, Lin Qingye said. What? Are you an imperial report? Standing, Lin Qingye was much taller than Jiang Sheng. Lin Qingye said, looking condescendingly down at him. What did you say? Jiang Sheng smiled and said, because the more I look at you, the more I want to sleep. Lin Qingye said, expression completely calm. Well, maybe if you stop sleeping with me so much, you can have another half. Okay, let me say that again. Lin Qingye said, expression completely calm. Well, maybe if you stop sleeping with me so much, you can have another hour of sleep every day. That way, you won't fall asleep in Xinjiang Hall. Jiang Sheng put on an expression as though he had a sudden realization. That makes sense. I will try it next time. Lin Qingye paused, frowned, and said, but you can't cut back too much. Oh my gosh, Qingye. Just admit you like your lovey-dovey bed scenes with your husband. I just wish we had some of those 18 plus chapters. I'm a full-fledged adult. I don't want to use my imagination too much. Please, author, throw us a freaking bone. Jiang Sheng found his wife cute that he couldn't help but ask, Qingye, how about a kiss? Lin Qingye's heart trembled slightly. He lowered his eyes and said calmly, kiss me if you want. Why do you have to spout so much nonsense? Jiang Sheng laughed. He was too lazy to stand up, so he put his arms around Lin Qingye's waist and forced him to bend down. He then raised his head and kissed him on his lips. This kiss gave Jiang Sheng a little more life. After the kiss, Lin Qingye found himself sitting on the other's lap, with the other's arms around him. His breathing had gone rough, his cheeks were flushed. The way he looked like he was asking him to have a taste completely blew away all Jiang Sheng's interest in handling proper work. However, the eternal sorrow of the corporate drone was that even if the sky was afire, they had to finish work first. Jiang Sheng hugged Lin Qingye from behind, resignedly picked up his brush, and continued writing out the unfinished secret missive. Lin Qingye recovered from the heat of passion and asked, You're letting Shen Haoshi visit the northern border? I suppose it simply isn't to let him catch up with Jing Chen. I firmly believe that the king of the north has no intention to rebel. But just in case, after all, I can't be taking the country as my plaything. Jiang Sheng thought of something. Speaking of which, I haven't been out of the capital with you yet. Where do you want to go on our honeymoon, babe? Lin Qingye asked. Honeymoon? What's that? Jiang Sheng put down his pen and patiently explained to him the origins of the honeymoon. Well, they will have a lot of time to spend in the bed.